Serrano joins us now, former deputy campaign director under President H.W. Bush. Mark, a lot at stake here, and here's one of the things I'm interested in. Russia seems to have taken the lead on Syria. They're promoting this idea of four safe spaces or safe zones, if you will, and a lot of countries have signed on to this. Should we allow them? Should we sign on to this and let them take the lead with this?
Well, I think that's going to be discussed today with Foreign Minister Lavrov, Charles, and I think we should absolutely play a very active role in discussions over these safe zones. It's critically important that refugees out of Syria have some place to go that is highly respected and highly protected, and I believe the president will back that position, and I think they're going to discuss it today.
Of course, we're talking about the strange bedfellows that all these international crises have created. Russia and its closer and closer relationship to Iran has to be a topic of conversation, too.
Well, you know, I think what no one really focuses on, Charles, in this relationship that's just starting out, burgeoning relationship between President Trump and Russia, is President Trump's favorite kind of leverage, which is economic leverage. He knows that Vladimir Putin, above all else, wants to see economic sanctions against them lifted. So the question is, how far will Putin come on Crimea and Ukraine? And that's where I think the president is going to use his economic leverage to gain the greatest concessions from the Russians.
It's unlikely they'll give up Crimea. That access to the Black Sea is just too critical for them and their ambitions in the region. But I think a lot of our NATO allies are concerned about perhaps stopping them from any further encroachment to the former Soviet republics. Agreed.
I mean, the Minsk agreement really hasn't been respected by either side. And so that's really where they're going to start, is probably finding the more of a realistic ceasefire and going from there. So I agree with you on Crimea, but anything's possible.
All right. Well, let me ask you about this, Mark, because it's starting to swirl the core Donald Trump backers. A little anxiety building. Ivanka Trump met with EPA Chief Scott Pruitt at the White House. They discussed the Paris Climate Agreement. Remember, President Trump, he picked Ivanka to lead the review on this deal. So if the president doesn't pull out, completely out of the Paris climate deal, is this going to go against his base?
Well, there's a lot of pressure there for sure, Charles. Look, I believe ultimately if the president looks at this through the economic prism that he typically looks at most issues, he's going to recognize this is not the Paris Climate Change Agreement. It's a U.S. jobs loss agreement that ultimately the energy sector pays the price, because this was a bad deal. China and India are off the hook for the next 12 years, and the U.S. has front-loaded costs, particularly from our energy sector, and the president has been a champion of the energy sector. I think what Administrator Pruitt will tell Ivanka Trump is that state attorneys general are readying lawsuits on the Clean Power Plan, and their main argument is going to be that the Paris Climate Change Agreement provides them legal basis for their suing on the Clean Power Plan. So that's a real serious problem that the president faces. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure. I think at a minimum, the president will demand a renegotiation. Look, this was an illicit deal. This should have been a treaty, but President Obama clearly wouldn't bring it before the GOP Senate during his tenure. So I think the president's going to at least demand it be completely renegotiated.
Rex Tillerson says we should keep a seat at the table. Could there be a compromise?
I think so. I think that's what we're looking at. I mean, yes, I think there's a lot of pressure to scrap the agreement. I think it'd be a great place to start. But Tillerson may ultimately win out by saying, look, we're going to tell China and India, this deal stinks. You either renegotiate it or we're out.
One more thing, Mark. The Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross saying that we won't get 3% growth without President Trump's economic agenda being pushed through. Is this a tactical move on his part to get perhaps Washington, D.C. to move quicker, or just a real economic reality?
I think it's both. I think it's a warning signal to Capitol Hill that says, you guys better back this plan and back the tax reform package and get on board quickly, or else absolutely our economic growth will be in question. We can go past 3%. Let's go past 4%, but it depends primarily on this tax cut plan. And I think Wilbur Ross is sending a message to the congressional leadership and the GOP that says, get behind us fast, or else we're going to lose that opportunity.
All right. Thank you very much.